Today, what we'll cover is, in our discussion with Arushi, get to the bottom of her application to Ashoka University first, and then we'll also get to know about her life there, not just academics, but various things that she's been doing for the last 3.5 years now. Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. This is our third season, and I'm so delighted to welcome Arushi Sharma, a student I've known for over 4, 5 years now. And while you were in high school, in your sophomore year, and then when you applied to various universities. I'll take a minute to talk about liberal arts colleges in general. Liberal arts colleges are often misunderstood to be institutions that only offer social sciences and humanities and languages as courses. However, it would be fair enough to sort of point out that well-established liberal arts colleges are also liberal arts and science colleges, and they offer various sort of courses in not just the natural sciences, but also BSc degrees in psychology and many such streams. Increasingly, many liberal arts colleges have their largest cohort in the computer science. So that's also something unique to be sort of known. So there's this demand for a particular type of course load, and they fill in that gap. Many humanities and social science students also take up quantitative reasoning courses and also data science and computer science courses. So it sort of bridges that divide between what's a science degree and what's a humanities degree and a social science degree. So my first question is, how do you get in to a highly selective liberal arts college like Ashoka? And what are the different parts of the application process which one should keep in mind?
That's a good question. And that's a question I've heard a lot from my juniors, especially considering how I think Ashoka has this reputation of being quite unpredictable with their intake. I think one insight I have, one observation I've had is that these kind of colleges like having applicants that come off as opinionated, people that hold opinions and have a certain outlook, and that needs to be reflected in some way in their application. And also people who I think have demonstrated some kind of participation in multiple spheres. So they don't just look for academic rigor, but they look for some kind of participation, some kind of impact in your extracurriculars and leadership roles and any sort of engagement outside just your academics per se. And they also try to, I think, look for applicants that stand out in some sort of way. That's also very important because you have to keep in mind that these colleges tend to have like many applicants, and it's usually one or two people who are sitting through your application. So you must have something that sort of stands out. And why should someone take someone like me? Like, what is it that I have to offer? Um, so that's, I think, one thing to take into consideration. Now, when I applied, which was around 4 years ago, the application process was divided into different phases. So you had phase one, you had phase two, all the way to phase four. And the highest chances, the best, in fact, it was always recommended that you apply earlier on. And the way it worked was that there was, of course, like you have to submit your grades. You had 3 essays that you had to also write. These essays were sort of were trying to understand you as a person, what your motivations are, why you're going into the field that you are. Apart from that, we also had a section on what kind of extracurricular activities or what kind of projects we had carried out prior to college, and uh, and I think if I'm remembering correctly now, there is also a section for submitting your resume or your CV. So that was there. This was before submitting the application, and there was also a letter of recommendation that I think was optional, but I would highly recommend everyone who's applying to look into getting a letter of recommendation. But they're not very transparent with what is most important or what's least important. But I think that at least from the bigger cities, we can assume that academics take a pretty strong, like they are very important. Ashoka is, um, we do have a lot of people in my cohort are, that I've had exceller academics. So that's one thing that needs to be strong, but also what are you beyond that? Like, what have you done? Who are you as a person beyond your academics? They look for people that have some kind of, I think, individuality, that something unique, something, they look for bold people, in my opinion. Um, and the second part of the application is taken on the spot. So I think this is only if your application qualifies. You have an on the spot essay in which you are given a topic, and within half an hour you have to write on it. So the topic I got was, I remember, do you think that women are better suited for nurturing roles in this economy? Um, Again, very opinion based. Uh, and I also had given an aptitude test, which is optional, I believe, but I would still recommend people take that. Followed by that was my interview process. And that's how the application process was at least 4 years ago.
It sounds very comprehensive, especially the
Yeah.
interview part where you're sort of made to not only answer questions but also do on the spot writing. What have you been hearing lately about that part, which is the in-person interaction on campus with university admission staff or professors, and what are they really looking for in the various parts, not just the interview but also the written section?
I think one thing that even Ashoka, remember, always tries to sort of promote is this idea of critical thinking. That is, that you don't take things at face value and you try to examine things beyond what is being told to you. You read in between the lines. And that is something that I think they look for in both your interview and your on the spot essays. Uh, I remember the kind of prompts we had for any of the essays we had, and even the questions I was asked in my interview were very much trying to understand, I think, why I thought what I did, trying to question my assumptions, trying to see how much rigor I had when I presented my arguments. Um, and I think that is something they're looking for. So, uh, for instance, I remember they had asked me during my interview, how self-aware do you think you are? Why do you think you're this self-aware? Rate me on a scale of 1 to 10. What is self-awareness to you? They ask you questions like that. Um, Trying to really understand how good are you at presenting a certain point, and how good are you at challenging any given piece of information, because a lot of that's also done in your courseworks, like our foundation courses, which you will do in your first year, are very much sort of teaching you to think in a way that is perhaps different from how the Indian education system has always been.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about your major and your journey toward that major. I know you were always interested while in high school. You also did a project at our office
Yeah.
related to behavioral sort of economics and stuff. So when you look at psychology as your field of interest, how quickly did you sort of zero in on while you were on campus? What were the steps in understanding the different streams related to psychology that you could pursue? What were the interconnections with other departments that you saw? And then why did you then choose that additional 1 year of ASP, which is the postgraduate diploma at Ashoka? What kind of research are you pursuing? And the professors that are enabling that with you, what what is the future of that sort of interest you think you could sort of contribute to the world with? So it's, I know it's a long question, but basically about academic life and your academic journey.
So for me, I think it wasn't an easy decision by any means to stick with psychology. I remember being very, very confused because I was actually interested in two other fields as well. I wanted to pursue English, um, or even political science, because even though I didn't think this was something I would be interested in prior to college. Because again, our foundation courses, which were sort of I remember the ones I had were sort of, some of them were on English, some were on sociology, some were on like hard sciences. I remember as soon as my first semester was over, I was like, I kind of enjoy English a lot more than I thought I would. And I remember thinking that maybe this is something that I might want to pursue later on. But then I took a introductory psychology course the next semester, and I realized I liked that actually a little bit more. Um, so for me, it was not at all an easy decision. I think only by my second year, I was sure that I wanted to pursue psychology. But the way I have planned my academic trajectory has been such that I'm very liberal arts in the sense that even though I have a minor in the concentration in different fields, I have taken courses in a bunch of subjects, even beyond my foundation courses. Like I've done political science, I've done sociology, I've done English, I've done media studies. So I do think that I have a very strong background when it comes to the social sciences at large, even beyond psychology. And I think I'm very grateful that I got the opportunity to explore different ways of different fields, because I don't think that any one field exists in a vacuum. I don't think psychology can exist without biology or without sociology or without even political science or even the natural science. Everything is interconnected. And I think that because I've had an education which has been quite diverse, but also at the same time quite specific to my field, I have a better understanding of my way of looking at the world. So, what I want to get into, at least as of now, and everything is subject to change, is definitely consumer psychology and marketing. Marketing is something that really interests me, and I think psychology has a huge part to play in that. Um, I think understanding human behavior, understanding the patterns, the cognitive distortions, how emotions affect our behavior is very important in in a marketer's career, because essentially what we're trying to deal with is people and how to get their attention, how to get them to buy what we're trying to sell. And that cannot exist, I think, without having some kind of knowledge um, over subjects, right? Like policy always influences society. Society influences the individual. The individual influences society. Language, all that's interconnected, and henceforth, I think that um, having explored, having touched on different disciplines is very helpful in the way I look at the world, in the way I approach my career as well.
And what about the areas of research that you started focusing on, and how did this final year of university pan out? What is it
Oh,
that you?
right. Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So my first 3 years were mostly psych focused. I focused on finishing my degree. My fourth year, which was my post graduation diploma, here I was looking at two domains. One was media studies or journalism, and the second was entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship in the sense that I was more focused on looking at marketing related and design thinking courses, because I do believe that that is also something that I need to learn if I want to become a good marketer in the future. Um, so my fourth year was mostly focused on that. It was in fact quite challenging. I feel more challenging than my undergrad, because it was an entirely different field, and I had to learn a lot more new things. So that's why I did a fourth year, because I don't think just a psychology degree would have necessarily been enough for me to step into the corporate world. And I think having an additional diploma in a related but a different field is what has now I genuinely do feel like I'm a lot more prepared. Um, yeah, that's what I've done. My areas of interest, of course, my what I've done research in has been more on the side of consumer psychology and social psychology. That's where I'm interested in. Um, I'm interested in seeing how what emotions brands evoke in people, and how branding makes an influence in the way people perceive things. But of course, all of this is subject to change.
Yeah, I like that. Subject to change.
Yeah.
That's the mantra of your generation. Things and it
Yes.
change. To a very different aspect. And you've been volunteering at the Wellness and Wellbeing Center. So which is interesting. And I just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about mental health. And we see students going through life and have a very warped sense of self-worth. They swing
Yes.
from very low self-esteem to sort of an extreme sort of narcissistic behavior, and
Yeah.
that tendency to really not find that balance. There's also difficult situations kids go through when they're in university, and they're possibly haven't dealt with something like that before, and they get consumed by their own story. It's all about them, and they don't really include the whole community, the community of care the university is meant to be to support them, and they feel isolated and hopeless and sort of kind of despondent. There's always that sense of chasing success, which is very elusive and something that they have really not planned or thought through. That also adds pressure from
Yeah.
family and sort of society and career paths that are happening and so on and so forth. So there are so many things. With the wellness center, what exactly did you do to
Mhm.
alleviate some of these things? And what are the other problems you noticed in your generation? Just a quick one.
I don't know where to get started on that actually. So the wellness center I've worked in was more from a social media marketing perspective, but I've also done internships in counseling, psychology, and I have had the ability to interact with a lot of people my age. And as you said, there are a lot of stressors that we face in university. I think one common thing I have seen around me is, I think up until school, especially if you're getting into a college like Ashoka, you're which is quite selective. In school, not everyone around you might be on the same level as you academically or success wise or um extracurricular wise. But once you go to college, it's everyone around you has sort of been a similar student like you, which is why they also got into that place. So it's very easy, I think, to feel isolated and to feel kind of imposter syndrome, feel less than compared to other people. And that's something I have seen a lot in not only my friends, not only in myself, but also from my own professional experiences, that people do tend to have a kind of imposter syndrome carrying on. And I think that is something that is very natural, actually. I think sometimes I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that if you're not the smartest or not the best person in the room, you are in the right room, because it's okay to. I think that these are the kind of environments in which you will learn the most. If you are the best at what you do in everywhere you go, then what are you learning from other people really? But if you are around people who might exceed a little bit more than you in certain areas, I think you have more to pick up on from that. That is, I think, one thing. The second thing is there's of course a lot of competitiveness that goes on, a lot of sense of competition, especially when everyone around you seems to have it all figured out. Everyone around you seems to be bagging really good internships and grad school applications, and there's a lot of competitiveness around, a lot of pressure to get to graduate with Latin honors. That's something that almost everyone I have seen, like we have to graduate cum laude. Um, and when you have an environment that is like that, I think it's very natural to feel pressurized and also feel low about yourself. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize that it's okay if some people are doing better than you right now. It's okay. It's all right. You don't have to compete with them. They are not, other people are not really your competition, and that is something that even I have had to learn in college. um, I do think that the competition is always with our own selves and past versions of ourselves instead of with other people, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes of someone else's life. um, yeah, that's one thing that I think definitely people I have seen people face. I do think that at least in Ashoka, people do tend to have a lot of imposter syndrome, especially in their first years. I remember thinking and even speaking to my friends, how is everyone here so smart? Like, why? How are they able to use such big words, and how are they able to use such navigate? Have so much clarity with what they're trying to say. And then even when I realized that, oh, actually, they feel the same way about me. It's very much a two-way street. It's quite funny, actually. It's like we're all intimidated by each other because we all see some things in the other person that we can't see in ourselves.
Attending a highly selective school does lead to that feeling of imposter syndrome. And
Yes.
also have a very strange sort of relationship with time. They feel that time is always running out. There's so much
Yeah.
to do and so much to catch up to. And there's another aspect of time which is very unique is, you know, when will my real life start? What am I chasing? This just getting, the highest honors in academics, being the Greek god or goddess on campus.
Yeah.
And even if I get that, what's next? By when will I actually start just being myself and living? So that strange connection with, I'm just trying to do things, and A, time's running out, and B, I don't really know whether I'm enjoying
Yeah.
what I'm doing is a strange feeling to have. Thanks for sharing about, these nuggets about life on campus at Ashoka. One just last sort of question would be, what's next for you, and where do you see, where will this diploma or postgraduate sort of year lead to?
So I plan on working for the next 2, 3 years. I've always looked at my future in such a way that right now this is what I want to do right now. But just because this is what I want right now does not mean that this is what I will want 2, 3 years later on. So right now I seem to have found a niche for myself that I enjoy, which is I think content creation and social media marketing. Um, and I am trying to build my skill sets around that. I believe that right now is a great time for me to get practical experience and knowledge around this field, because it's not a very theory intensive career. It's a very practical, you learn the best on the job. So right now what I'm trying to do is really trying to get whatever as much experience as I can the next 2, 3 years. And once I'm done with that, I will go for my master's, most likely in the US, the UK. Um, After that, I hope to, if I'm continuing on the same career path, work somewhere, build some expertise, and then eventually start a consultancy, a social media consultancy of my own someday. That is my dream. I do eventually see myself working on my own and on my own pace and as my own boss. That's the plan for now.
Thank you so much, Arushi. It's just lovely to see you become this confident and sort of matured young woman, and who's contributing so much to campus community, and sort of your interests in academics are shaping up with so much clarity. All the best, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.